Welcome, Mr. A. Welcome, Mr. A. Not too much, man. Just chilling. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the John DeVito Show. It is Wednesday. It is Hump Day. It is a Mystery Wednesday. And basically, the reason why I put that up there is because to me, when I created the show, it was actually a mystery to me as to what I'd be talking about. So there's no real big surprise. We'll see if this name brings anybody in. But I actually developed a pretty good show today. So I think today should be a fun show. Got a bit of a heavier show coming up this afternoon. So I don't often do two shows in a day, but later on today, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, that's Boston time, we are going to be doing another interview. This one with a young woman in her 30s who attended a place called the Show Me Christian Group Home in Missouri, and she's going to be telling us her story. So she's got a difficult story to tell, and honestly, as she tells the story, it's going to be as big a surprise to me as to anybody else. I had a good long conversation with her. She told me she has a lot to tell us, and we did not go into specifics on the phone. So I'm going to be hearing that story firsthand, like all of you do. So that's going to be coming up later today at 5 o'clock, the interview with the Show Me Christian Youth Home. And I'm not going to be sharing the young lady's name, but it's going to be one of those shows that I don't love doing, but it's one of those shows that I think needs to be done. So we'll be hearing her stories. And again, this is just another school in Missouri that's doing the same type of thing as Circle of Hope and Agape. So hopefully we can do what we can to shed light on a lot of these places. Now, before I get into what I wanted to talk about today, and we've got a fun show today. It's not going to be serious, but there have been a lot of things happening at Agape the last couple of days. If you haven't seen it, get on the internet, Google, the Agape boarding school in Stockton, Missouri. They've had police officers in that school for the last 5 days. They are under intense investigation. They are being sued by ex-students. So right now it looks like it's only a matter of time before this Agape boarding school ends up closing, and their reign of terror over children that they've had going on for decades will be over, at least in the state of Missouri. I mean, who knows? They could pop up someplace else in another state that allows these type of things to happen. So hopefully that won't be the case. But I am happy that our show has made a difference, with the Circle of Hope. Our show has made a difference with Agape. And we have another, again, this woman I'm going to be introducing today, or interviewing today, is from that Show Me Christian Youth Home, again in Missouri. Now, I got an email last night also. I mean, these things just keep coming. Once you start doing these shows, the word gets out there, I think. I do have 4 guys that want to come on from Agape. We still haven't set the date on that, so we're working that out. And I'm looking for the email as I talk to you right now. I'm not going to reveal the woman's name, but someone did write me last night, and she is saying that she's not from Agape, not from Circle of Hope, but she wants to tell her story on yet another school in Missouri that has been doing the same type of thing. So, these things keep growing, and we find more and more schools that are doing these type of things. But I am proud anyway that I was able to play a part in it. And hopefully this afternoon, I'll be joined with Chris, who's going to be helping me do the interview. And I'm excited to hear him get in because he's obviously a very passionate guy. And this hits very close to home to him. So it's going to be good having him on, kind of helping me out today. So now to get into the show, it's kind of funny. I see I've got some people coming in now. I named it today's show. It's a Mystery Wednesday. And the reason why I did that is I didn't have a creative name. So when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, it was kind of a mystery to me. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make it. It's a Mystery Wednesday, and I'm just going to kind of go with it. But over the course of the night and the morning today, I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today. And with tonight being, this afternoon show is going to be kind of a heavy show, I wanted to keep this one light and just have some fun. And there is going to be a point behind what I talk about in the beginning, because I was thinking a lot about, cancel culture. And this is not going to be a political show, but the political thoughts led me into, thinking about the show. So, I was thinking about this new cancel culture that we're dealing with in this country right now. And to me, it's just crazy. I mean, so many things are just being taken away, on a daily basis. You have most recently, we've now heard that Mr. Potato Head is now going to be off the shelves because he is, in fact, Mr. Potato Head. And apparently it's wrong for him to have a gender. And, it is what it is. Mr. Potato Head is no longer going to be a thing. Now, for me as a kid, I don't think I ever really even liked playing with Mr. Potato Head. I thought he was kind of creepy and didn't really understand, the whole fascination with him. But for goodness sakes, people, it's a toy. It's a toy. We can't get personal and upset over every little thing that happens. So, when you see things like Mr. Potato Head being banned in this cancel culture, it honestly kind of makes me laugh a little bit. It's like, really? Have we gotten to the point in this society where we're just this silly about canceling everything? So to me, it just doesn't make sense. It's just kind of a crazy thing. And for everybody coming in, please share my live if you could, if you haven't already done so. I'd love to get my name up on that leaderboard, maybe to start the month this year. I'm doing pretty well so far, so I'd like to maybe pop on there before all the religious shows absolutely wipe me out. So please share me. It helps build my engagement score. And if anyone would love to donate pod points, I am here and I am shamelessly asking for them. So feel free to donate those if you'd like. And if you don't, that's cool too. So anyway, Mr. Potato Head was one. Dr. Seuss, that one gets me. Now, my daughter was talking about Dr. Seuss. I don't know a lot about him personally, but apparently Dr. Seuss was an ass. He wasn't a good guy. His wife committed suicide because he was just a complete asshole. He was cheating on her, not a good guy, not a good husband, whatever. But the bottom line is his books have been the staple of, reading for kids for many, many years. I mean, when I was a kid, my parents would read me Dr. Seuss books and I read them to my kids. And it was kind of funny, thinking upon it now, we didn't realize at the time, but the first sign that we had that my son Matt actually had autism was when he was probably, I don't even know, like 2 years old, maybe. He actually memorized all 88 pages of The Cat in the Hat, word for word. So at the age of 2, he could barely speak, but he was able to recite the entire book, 88 pages, word for word. And of course, my wife and I at the time were like, oh my God, he's a genius. We had no idea that he had autism, and that had to do, with, I guess, his memory. But I mean, he is a genius. He's unbelievable with, facts and birth dates. And, we got to have Matt on again sometime. He is absolutely amazing, where he can literally answer a question about any movie star in the world. If you want to know when they were born, how old they were, what movies they've been in, where they grew up. I mean, anything about any movie star, you ask him and he's got the whole bio memorized. But it started with him back with Cat in the Hat. So we've seen Mr. Potato Head, Dr. Seuss, things like Paw Patrol, Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben, and basically any sports team that has like a Native American mascot, they're all gone for the most part. And it was funny. I was watching TikTok the other night, and actually TikTok is really growing on me. There are a lot of good videos on that you watch about different things. And there was a black man on TikTok who did a video. And it was interesting the way he kind of angled this. He was saying, if you look at all of the figureheads that have been canceled off of companies, Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben, on and on and on, the majority of the people who have been taken off food boxes have actually been African American men. And he's like, how come we still have the guy from KFC up there and all these other white figures that maybe had racist backgrounds? Why are they up there? But the black faces have been taken off the boxes. And I thought about that a lot. I mean, when I looked at, not that I really thought about it that deeply, but when I looked at Aunt Jemima, I looked at Uncle Ben, I looked at, schools that had like, Native Americans as their symbols. I went to one. The name of my high school was Central Catholic up in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and we were the Central Catholic Red Raiders. My father's high school was the Amesbury Indians. And when I looked at mascots, I mean, maybe I can't understand because I'm not Native American, but when I looked at these mascots, I looked at them as fighting, fierce warriors. I didn't look at them as, anything weak or anything disparaging. And it was just kind of a strange thing that people look at it that way and, have just kind of gone after that whole thing. So as I was thinking about, cancel culture and all the different things that we've lost, in society, it started to make me think about the old days. And I know for some of you, a few people in here, you can probably relate. I'm an old guy. I'm 53 years old. I was born in 1968, graduated high school in 1986. So most of my childhood was in the 1970s and the 1980s. And I was thinking about, stories from my childhood, the way life was back in those days as compared to how it is today. And it was honestly just a, vastly different world than it is right now. And I think in a lot of ways, it was a much better world. It really was. I mean, there were things back in the day that weren't perfect. I mean, you had, racism was more out there. You had a lot more women that weren't accepted into the workplace, and women, didn't have the rights that they had today. I mean, there were things that were not good about that time period, but there was also a lot of things that were good. Back in the day, back in the 1970s, back in the 1980s, I mean, you could say something without everybody getting offended. I mean, today we're in this culture where no matter what you say, you're going to offend somebody. You're going to, say the wrong thing. You're going to phrase it the wrong way. You're going to use the wrong pronoun. And I mean, people literally today have to walk on eggshells all the time, worried that they're going to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing. They're going to end up being someone that's part of the whole canceled culture type of thing. And I guess maybe that's an assault on our freedom of speech, because they're trying to make us so afraid of everything that we're afraid to speak out. And I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but back in the 1970s, 1980s, it was a different time. You could speak your mind. You could have debates about things, and people didn't get all self-righteous about the debate. You could have a debate and you could disagree with somebody, but I think both sides back in those days could agree to disagree a little bit better without all the fighting that happens today, and people are unfriending each other on Facebook, and it's all this drama. I mean, those type of things didn't happen back in the day. But I was thinking about my childhood. I mean, I was really, really fortunate. I grew up in a small little town in New Hampshire. When I lived there as a kid, I think there were maybe 3 or 4 thousand people in this small town. Now there are closer to 8 or 9 thousand people. So it's a lot different of a town right now. But we had a childhood that was just so unbelievable in the 1970s. I mean, I remember very, very clearly. I mean, I'm thinking of every summer day. The parents weren't as protective as they are today. And in some cases, parents need to be protective, but, the parents would let their kids free range and go out and play. And again, I lived in a fairly safe place, so you could do that. But I would wake up on a summer day, and, my father would be off to work. He worked long hours. He'd be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he wouldn't, get home till probably 6 or 7 o'clock at night. So my mother would be home, with myself and my sister. And, I had my real good school friends that I would spend time with. A lot of those friends turned out to be some of my best friends in life, who I still hang out with these days, even later in my life. But I also had my neighborhood friends. So you had like school friends, like your friends that you were really close with because of sports or whatever. But then I had other kids, and I'll call them my neighborhood friends, because I wasn't able to really, I wasn't really in a neighborhood. I was on a main street, but I could ride my bike in to this gigantic neighborhood. So for me, my neighborhood friends, I would get up in the morning. I'd have my breakfast. My mother would be up, and she worked sometimes nights as a nurse, but a lot of times during the day she was home. So she would tell me point blank, "So what are you going to do today?" And if I didn't have any plans, if the plan was to sit inside and watch TV or hang around the house, that wasn't happening. My mother would look back and say, "Nope, you need to get out of the house, go find some friends, make something happen." And it's funny, that's how it was back in the day. I mean, back when I was little, your mother didn't call and set up play dates for you. Your mother wasn't organizing, okay, on next Tuesday, we can all go to the bouncy house place and all get together. I mean, those type of things didn't happen back in the 1970s. Back in the 1970s, I would get up in the morning, talk to my mother, have the breakfast, like I said, and then I would get on my bicycle and I would literally be gone until dinner time. I mean, there may be some days where I would stop home at lunch, because the neighborhood that I rode into was a huge neighborhood, but it was also relatively close to where I lived. I mean, my mother didn't need to know where I was. I didn't have a cell phone because there weren't any. I didn't have a pager because there weren't any. So I would literally get on my bike, kiss my mother, say goodbye to mom, and I'd be off. And, it was something where I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was doing, but I would ride into this neighborhood. And now there were these two streets. You would ride down your bike on my main street, and you would take a left into these two streets. And there were a bunch of houses on those streets, but then those streets led into a giant neighborhood where there were just tons of kids. So usually I would, ride my bike down to one of those two streets. One of them was called Pheasant Lane, and I would ride my bike down Pheasant Lane, and there were a bunch of families in that neighborhood with a bunch of boys. So I would just go up, like I'm sure some of the older people in here have done. I would ring doorbells. I would knock on doors. Generally, when I pulled my bike into the driveway, the kids would see me and they'd come running outside. And before we knew it, we'd have, who knows, it could be some days 5 kids outside. Other days there could have been 20, because none of the kids at that time were sitting inside, watching 800 channels, watching YouTube. They weren't on Xbox with their headphones on, playing with their friends in that manner. The only way you could see your friends was by going outside, seeing them in person, and playing with them. And our parents, they were not micromanaging everything we did. They weren't worried about Johnny going out and getting into trouble, because they also had faith that other parents would be watching. So if you were doing something you shouldn't be doing, some of the other parents, who my parents also knew, would set me straight, and my parents would probably never hear about it. So, it was a different time back then, but man, we had so much fun. I mean, we would get together, we'd be outside. And I remember there was one house in this particular neighborhood on Pheasant Lane, and it was a family called the Bigger family. They had 4 kids. They had a small little house, but 4 kids. They had a daughter and 3 boys. Now, we used to go over and play tackle football in their yard. They had a good yard for football. And one of the guys that I'm going to tell you about is going to come in to play in the story that I have to tell later when we were older. So it's kind of funny. But I would literally go over to this house and we would play football. Now, man, we would get into some rough games where we would be, tackling each other. I mean, we'd come home bloody, bruised, whatever. There was never a call from your parents to any other parents. But, we would go out and we'd have a good time and just play hard and have fun. But it was funny. I found out later in life that the 3 boys that lived in that house, who we played football with all the time, the oldest went into the Air Force. The middle boy became a Green Beret, and the youngest became a Navy SEAL. And I was pretty good friends with him. So if you think about it, man, I used to go over and kind of play with some pretty tough customers, but we had fun. We had a good time. Now I'm going to look down my chat. I see that old man, actually Cummings asked me, what time is the interview tonight? It's actually at 5:00 in the afternoon Eastern time. So 5 p.m. Eastern time. Chris and I are going to be going on with this woman from the Show Me Christian Youth Home in Missouri. And unfortunately, we've got some stories. So yeah, I'm definitely not at 7 p.m. tonight. Nope, 5 p.m. Eastern time. So for California, that would be what, 4:32. So yep, 5:00 Eastern. Okay. So anyway, talking about that, so there was this one family, again, like I talked about, we played football with, we had a great time. There was another neighbor, I would ride to his house, and in this house, they had 2 older boys and a girl. And this was a house that was a few houses away from me. So I would ride over to their house. Same thing. We'd play football outside. We'd play wiffle ball. We'd go fishing. We'd be out in the woods, looking for things, looking to get in trouble. Across from the street, there was a big field with a pond. We'd go out there and we'd go fishing and, whatever else, and just did all these kinds of different boy things. So in this house, though, they had a big barn out back. And in this barn, one of the older kids, who was like 2 or 3 years older than me, had set up a boxing gym. So it was the time when Rocky was pretty popular. So he had speed bags. He had a big punching bag. He had like a ring in there and everything. So he would come in and he would invite me over and he'd be like, all right, John, listen, I'll let you be Rocky Balboa. I'm going to be Apollo Creed. Okay. We're going to give you about 15 minutes to train. And then once you're done training, we're going to fight. So, of course, I was young, 3 years younger than this kid, and just stupid. So I agreed to it. So I would go into this barn. And he would train me. He'd make me jump rope. He'd make me work the speed bag. He'd make me work the big punching bag. And then he'd look at me and be like, all right, I think you're ready. And I'd be like, all right, I'm ready to go. So we'd start off easy. I'd be Rocky and he'd be Apollo. And if you remember the Rocky movies, generally Rocky usually got beat up pretty good, before he ended up either tying or winning a fight. So, man, this kid would bring me in and he would just beat the crap out of me. And for whatever reason, I was young. I thought it was fun. I'm not sure why I did, because I kept going back. But I remember the first time I went home after, getting into the boxing match with my buddy, is I came home. I was young. I had bruises on my face. I had a bloody nose. I had all kinds of things going on. I remember my mother was pretty upset. She's like, what happened? Where were you? I was like, oh, I was over the Coyle's house, and we went out to the back of the barn and had a little boxing match, and I lost, and it is what it is. But she never ended up calling anybody. It never became a thing. I explained to her what it was about. I mean, today, I think in today's society, you'd have a parent that would just go overboard crazy. I mean, in today's society, we have so many helicopter parents who are watching like every kid's moves. They can't breathe on their own. And it's just like a different world altogether. So I think back on the freedom I had as a young kid, my ability to ride around and have fun with friends and not have parents like just, micromanaging every moment of my life. And I think, honestly, one of the problems the kids have today is they're not out there learning how to problem solve. They're not learning out there, running out there every day, learning, trying to be creative and come up with new ways to entertain themselves. The entertainment is handed to them on a silver platter. Here it is. Here's your Xbox, play video games. You're not going to have any problems because you're only playing a game. You're not out really living your own life. So it was just kind of strange that things were so much different, but in my mind, just a lot better in a lot of ways. I mean, in that same neighborhood, I used to go to Pheasant Lane all the time. We play football. In the summer, one of the families in that neighborhood would set up like 3 tents in their yard, so their kids would literally sleep in the tent like all summer. So sometimes I would just ride my bike over, spend the day, and then at the end of the day, use their landline because, of course, we didn't have cell phones back then. I'd call home and ask my mother if I could sleep over, and I'd end up sleeping in the tents with these other kids my age, and we'd be out there with flashlights and screwing around and playing manhunt and doing all these different things at night. But it was just fun. It was easy fun and just memories I'll kind of keep with me forever. Now it was funny. I don't know if there are any hockey fans out there, but this story is kind of interesting. Now I lived again southern New Hampshire. We were about 40 miles from Boston, and one of the guys' houses we used to go to, his name was Mike Lucier. His father ended up taking the big picture. If you remember when the Bruins won the Stanley Cup years ago, then there was a picture of Bobby Orr like jumping through the air after he scored a goal. Well, my next door neighbor's father was the guy that took that picture, which was kind of cool. Hey, Mr. T, we'll see you soon, man. And it was just kind of cool that this kid's father took this famous picture. We had no idea it was him. And but we used to hang out with this guy all the time, but he was the biggest troublemaker. He would get me into so much trouble. When I went to his house, I knew there was probably a pretty good chance that my parents were going to be called. I was going to get in trouble for doing something wrong. And it was just that type of house. They were good kids, but man, they used to like to go out and do whatever. And I remember on the main street I lived on, the street, Salem Road in Atkinson, New Hampshire, there was a giant oak tree that kind of hung over the street. And he actually at one point climbed up this oak tree and literally put a toilet seat, probably, I don't know, 50, 60 feet above the road. And this kid would literally climb up this tree. I mean, he'd be way the hell up there. I would never climb a tree that high, but he would get way the hell up there and he would literally sit on this toilet seat above the road, and he would look to time it so he could actually poop on a passing by car. So you can imagine why I got in trouble with these guys, man. It was always that type of stuff with them, but it was kind of funny thinking back on it. And I would actually walk with my parents, and I'd always look up as we walked by, that tree, because I knew the toilet seat was up there, and who knows if Mike Lucier was up there. So I don't know, just crazy things, different generation. I don't remember thinking a lot about racism and all the different things that we're thinking about today. I mean, that's on everybody's mind all the time. I know that racism existed back then, but it just seemed like it wasn't in your face like every moment of the day. And I don't remember, even though living in like a very white neighborhood, I mean, I don't remember people saying really negative things about other races or other types of people. So I don't know. It's just a different world altogether. And, I've been really thinking a lot about my younger years, having kind of, fun with these same guys. Here's the story I just remembered. This is kind of funny. Now, of course, today, boys get older and they start getting interested in girls. And today, all you have to do is flip on your phone and go to Pornhub or whatever it is, one of the many platforms that my sons, of course, all know about. But back in the day, you'd have to get, magazines. There was no internet. There were no ways to kind of look at things on your phone or on a computer. So the only way to do it old school was to like find someone that had a magazine or friends that maybe got into their father's stash of magazines, and you'd end up, taking a peek. So in this same neighborhood, and I don't know if I should say the name because I'm going to be ratting these guys out, but there was a treehouse out in the woods behind one of my friend's houses. And when you went out to the treehouse, the parents probably had no idea because they probably hadn't been up in this treehouse in years. But they didn't realize that in my small little neighborhood, in my small little area, this treehouse turned into like the local porn den. You went in there and there were literally like bins of like dirty magazines and things like that boys in the neighborhood had been putting up there for years. So literally, we would go up there and you'd have like, 5 or 6 kids in there just kind of flipping through like dirty magazines, Playboy, Penthouse, whatever else there were. But it was just so funny to think about that you drive by and you'd see this treehouse out in the woods thinking, oh, isn't that sweet? Those boys have a treehouse. They're hanging out, having fun. Little do they know all these 8, 9, and 10-year-olds were in there looking at porn, in that treehouse. So I don't know, crazy stuff, man. It was funny back in the day, and I don't know. We've got a lot of good things today also, but I do miss a lot of the old things that we used to do. So I see Vanilla Ice came into the room. Ice Baby. Welcome PBJ as well. And I've got my 11-year-old son, Ethan, looking at me, making stupid faces. Do you want to come over and explain that 14. Face? Come on over, whatever you want. 14, 12. All right, come on over. So you walk by me and you've got a dirty shirt on that looked like you haven't washed in like a month, and you made this goofy face and looked at me. So explain the goofy face.
It was to distract you.
Oh, it's distract me. So you know that I'm on doing a podcast, and you're trying to distract me. So let me get you a little closer. So let me ask you some questions. Now I'm gonna put you on the hot seat a little bit now. So Ethan, you're 14 years old. You're in eighth grade. Do you have a girlfriend?
No,
And why is that?
because I don't want a girlfriend.
Now I know you just heard my podcast. You heard me talking about the treehouse full of porn that we had back in when I was a kid. Of course, I think that you've accessed your phone in certain ways. Have you not?
Yes, but have you?
And have I caught you doing that?
Yes, but have you?
We don't need to talk about that, so we'll let it go with that. So that's my son Ethan. I had to embarrass him back a little bit. But yeah, for those people coming in, I am doing a show tonight. I'm going to be on at 5:00 Eastern time this afternoon, and we're going to be doing an interview about the Show Me Christian Youth Home, and that's going to be similar to some of the shows we've done on Agape and Circle of Hope and some of those things. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not really looking forward to it, but it's going to be another one of those situations where we're allowing somebody to really come on and tell their story. So I think it's a good thing for us to do, but I've seen a few people asking about that in the chat, so I wanted to kind of make that clear to everybody that that's when that show is coming on. So now back in the day also, I don't know if you guys, if there are any older listeners back in here, but as I get older, there were a lot of different things we used to do hanging out also. Now, as I was in like high school and that age, we had bonfires out in the woods. Now, I'm not sure if anybody here has done anything like that because I don't see the kids today and where I live having these big bonfires. But we had literally had a place out in the middle of the woods called Moley's Pit. And it was named after the family that lived right next to where this was. I mean, you would literally have to like kind of hike into the woods. You'd have to park your car someplace or get dropped off. You'd hike into the woods, and generally we would have on weekends giant bonfires, people playing rock and roll, and then you'd have a keg or a beer ball out there in the woods, and you'd sometimes have maybe like 50 or 100 like teenage kids just hanging out in the woods by a campfire, drinking beer and chilling out. And I don't know if I see much of that anymore. I don't know if I see the kids of today getting together like that. Maybe it's because they're all busy with sports and activities and things like that, but I don't know. Maybe it was back in the day we had too much free time on our hands. I don't know. But back in the day it was fun. I mean, we would have those things quite often. And it makes me sad now when I drive up into New Hampshire because I know exactly where that fire pit used to be. And they actually built a Walmart on top of it. So Walmart took over our drinking pit from New Hampshire when we were kids. And that's always been kind of sad. So, I was thinking about some other funny stories, funny stories from my childhood, funny stories from my 20s. And I was talking a little bit earlier about that family that I used to play football with in their neighborhood. So there were the three brothers and the sister. The youngest brother, he was the fourth in that family, became a Navy SEAL. So as we got older, we would go out, we'd be in our 20s. And in my 20s, I was a bouncer at this nightclub at Hampton Beach in New Hampshire. So when I wasn't working, I would go out with two of my friends. And one of them was this guy, Scott, who was a Navy SEAL. And the other guy was a guy about my size. I'm probably 6'4", 275. He's about my size, and he was a Marine. So we would go out to bars together. So you'd have me. I was a college football player, big person. We had the Marine who was about my size, had the crew cut, just a mean-looking guy. Nobody would ever mess with him. And then the third guy we had was about 5'10", so he was a smaller guy, kind of thin, and his name was Scott. And if you looked at him, definitely he was the less imposing of the three of us, but he was the guy that was the Navy SEAL. So we would literally go out to bars, and for whatever reason, we were young. I guess maybe we were drinking too much. I don't know. We'd have people that would kind of like start fights with us and, start mouthing off, and we'd do the guy thing, yelling back and forth. And it never failed, but every time we went into a bar and someone started with the three of us, they would pick the smallest of the three that was Scott. And Scott was the Navy SEAL. So I remember sitting back every time, you've chosen between three guys, you pick the smallest out of the three, and you just made the biggest mistake of your life because he was just a killer. He was a great guy, but I mean, you just did not want to mess with him. He was a tough guy. I remember seeing him, when he was training after basic training for the SEALs. I was at a football stadium, and we were watching football games. There were two football games back to back. So we watched the first game and then stayed for the second game. This guy was running laps around the track at the football field for both games, wearing army boots in like 90-degree heat. The guy was just a beast. Oh, right. And he did too. He would love it. Old man. It would be me and the Marine, and people would just start with him. He was the youngest of four. He was a Navy SEAL. He had two older brothers. One was a Green Beret and one was in the Air Force. So they were tough guys. So they would kind of beat his ass every day. I still remember when we were kids. Now, I only had a younger sister, but I ended up going over his house and we were hanging out. So he said something to one of his older brothers, and he was, I don't know, at the time I was probably 10, he was probably 12, and his older brothers were more like 14 and 16. So he said something to his brother. He comes running out of the house full speed, screaming, help me, John. And I'm like, well, I don't know what you want me to do. I mean, I'm the oldest of two, and I've got a younger sister. I'm not used to fighting older brothers. So these two brothers come out, and they just start, they threw him on the ground. And I don't know if anybody remembers giving people pink bellies, but they lifted up his shirt and they were slapping him in the belly until his whole stomach turned pink. So they're slapping him. Then he started crying and screaming for his mother because his mother was home. So I guess in this house, she probably heard this quite a bit. So the mother literally yelled out the window and said, "What's going on out there, guys? Scott, are you okay?" The brother covered his mouth, yelled back up and said, "Yeah, Mom, I'm fine." So the mother was like, "All right, well, just take it easy out there." So after the mother went back in and the little brother was still on the ground, they took a handful of leaves, stuck it in his mouth, and he was crying with like leaves falling out of his mouth and things like that. So that was the youngest of that family who eventually became a Navy SEAL. And we'd go out to bars and people would start fights with this guy all the time. And we would literally try to talk people out of it. Like, listen, you really don't want to fight. This guy's a SEAL. He's a tough guy. But people sometimes made the decision to fight him, and it never really turned out well for them, unfortunately. So thinking about some of the other stories from my 20s, I've been very nostalgic lately. I think it's all the, like I said earlier, all the cancel culture we've been going through has kind of forced me to think about my childhood and how much the world's changed since I was young. And it made me think about a lot of these different stories. I had a really good group of friends. I was lucky. I met a group of guys in kindergarten and even in elementary school that I still maintain friendships with today. And I think a lot of that has to do with me playing sports with all of these guys because we played on teams, we formed friendships and whatever. And, as kids, we played baseball together, we played football, basketball, whatever, hung out in school. And of course, as we got into our 20s, we took the same type of intensity and brought it out to the bars with us and went drinking together. So I remember this one time in my early to mid 20s, okay, we went to this kind of popular bar. There was a street in this city near my town. It was just over the border in Massachusetts. The town I grew up in, New Hampshire, was Atkinson. It's right on the Massachusetts border. I'm like literally a mile and a half from Massachusetts. So we would go to this next town over, which was Haverhill, Massachusetts. And, it was a decent little city, and there was like a street full of like, Irish pubs and bars and stuff like that. So we decided to go to this bar that I don't even think it's there anymore. It was called the Lasting Room. It was like an Irish pub. It was a group of like 6 or 7 of us, good friends from my childhood. And we were in there having drinks and drinking Guinness and having a good time and trying to pick up girls. And like usually, probably not picking up girls, but, just having a good old time, just chilling and getting drunk and hanging out, in my 20s. So this one night, my friend, I won't mention his name because he'll get back to him. But when my one friend, who is a very successful guy in his life, he's a big time executive of the company and he does very well. He's a good guy. And he was one of those guys in life where he had it all. He had the extreme smarts in school, but then also had the personality to go with it. So he was just, a great friend to have. And in his 20s, he had some fun back in the day. But there was this one story, we're at the bar, we leave, we're all almost like fall down drunk. So we're walking out to the parking lot behind this bar. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're just kind of stumbling along, talking, having fun. My friend Jim just starts running. He starts running full speed across the parking lot. And we're all looking at him. He's being silly. He's running. He's throwing his arms up in the air. He's running through cars. I mean, there's no one really driving through the parking lot, so he wasn't in danger. But behind this bar and behind this parking lot was a giant river called the Merrimack River. And you can actually take this river into the ocean. You can bring big boats on it, go into the ocean. So it's a good sized river. So my buddy Jim is drunk. God knows how many drinks he's had that night. And he's running across the parking lot full speed, waving his arms, yelling and screaming. We're all laughing like hell because he's just being drunk and being stupid. And we thought it was funny. So all of a sudden, he decides to jump up on top of this big retaining wall, okay, right along the base of the river. And this retaining wall in the parking lot was probably a good 20 feet above the river level. So he jumps up on this retaining wall. It's probably 2 o'clock in the morning. He reaches out for a tree branch. I don't know what the hell he was thinking. I don't know if he thought he was going to grab that tree branch and hold on to it or whatever, but he reached for this tree branch and he missed it completely and he was gone into the darkness. At that point, we're all drunk. We're all like, oh my God, is he okay? Is he dead? What happened? We were like terrified. So we go running across the parking lot full speed, cutting through cars. We finally get over there because we were about 50 yards away from where he jumped into the river. So so we start yelling. We couldn't see because we're looking down and it was pitch black, so we couldn't see anything. So we're yelling his name, calling him. Are you okay? Are you all right? All of a sudden, it seemed like 20 minutes. It was probably like 3 minutes. We hear, yes, a response back. So we all start laughing. We're like, dude, are you okay? Holy shit, you just fell like 20 feet into a river. Jesus, did you hurt anything? Did you hit a rock? He's like, nah, I'm fine. I hit the water. I'm all right. He goes, I'm going to try to climb my way out of here. So we're like, all right. So we still can't see him. So we hear him, he's climbing up this tree. He gets like halfway up the tree and we hear like a loud crack of the branch. The branch broke and we hear, oh, splash, back in the water again. So he literally fell down again, probably another 10 feet, 15 feet from the tree branch that he had been climbing on back into the river. So I don't know. It took a while. He finally got out. Now he was wearing that night jeans and like a white long sleeve polo shirt. So he was dressed kind of decent and we were all dressed okay. So, what do we do? Our friend is loaded. Okay. He steps off of an overpass or a giant retaining wall and falls into a river. Luckily doesn't die. He's drenched from head to toe. Okay. So we decide to put him in the car and we decide to go home. So we're driving home and we all realized we were kind of hungry. So at that point, there was a little place called Lucky Corner, a Chinese restaurant up in that area. We decided to pull into Lucky Corner and get Chinese food. So here we are, 2 o'clock in the morning. We're all drunk. We got one friend who, for whatever reason, is wet from head to toe, and he's got tree bark all over his white polo shirt. We go in, we enter food, and nothing was said from anybody. So I don't know. It was just one of those nights. It was kind of crazy, just kind of a fun experience, and things I think about a lot as I'm getting older. So I wanted to have kind of a light, fun show today. I didn't want it to be a long show because, as I mentioned, as you know, we're going back on later on this afternoon with a woman from another Christian boarding school that unfortunately was assaulted back in the day, and we're going to be interviewing her a little bit later on. But as I talked about earlier in this show, I've been thinking a lot about the canceled culture we have going on in society right now. Everything's being canceled, everything's under scrutiny. You have to say the right thing all the time, and it just made me think about growing up in the 70s and 80s, and things were just different. Not everything was perfect. There were a lot of things that were broken back in the 70s and 80s, but I think one of the good things about living back then is you did have freedom. You were able to express yourself. People weren't offended by everything that people said. And I know in some cases that isn't a good thing because, people need to be careful about the things they say because you can really upset somebody or hurt someone or whatever. But back in the day, it was just a different world, and the government wasn't so in the middle of like canceling everything that they find to be controversial. Because once you get on that road, once you start deciding for people, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, once you start deciding for people, what books you should read, what books you shouldn't read, then you're really going down a very slippery slope. So I guess a lot of this stuff makes me feel bad for kind of like the younger generation. I look at, some of you out there that are younger than I am that, really maybe never experienced living in the 70s or 80s. I look at my sons who, talk about it quite a bit. They're like, yeah, this is kind of a tough world to grow up in sometimes. You have to be very careful about the things you say, and you don't know if someone's going to label you, based on basically anything they want to do at this point. Because people are just putting labels on other people and doing things like that all the time right now. So I do worry a lot about again the way the world is right now. I feel bad a lot of times for the younger generation, some of the crap that they have to put up with. So hey, Eric, I don't know if you're still here, if you took off, if you want to call in and all, feel free to call in. There he is. I know I've been ranting and just kind of raving for a little bit, but Eric, how you doing, man? How are things going?
I'm doing good today.
Oh, all right. Can you guys hear me? It
Make
looks
sure you
like
can hear
for some
me.
reason Eric just came through my computer. Can you guys all hear me okay?
I can hear you, John. Can you hear me?
Eric, you there? I can hear you, but it's weird. You're coming through my computer. Let me just check one thing real fast. I think one of my wires came loose. Let me just get that in. All right, let me hear. Talk now for me. I think you're in my headphones.
Right. Can you hear me in the headphones?
Okay, there you go. Okay. Yeah, we can hear you better now. So, yeah, I had one of my wires came loose. So, all right. So, hopefully, we can hear Eric now. I see Dawes saying he couldn't hear him. But, Eric, I mean, does any of this stuff hit home for you? I mean, I know I've been talking about a bunch of different things and talking about some of my childhood memories, but this canceled culture, I wouldn't say it's making me angry, but I just think it's upsetting me. It's bothering me, thinking that this is the way our
I
country
think
is
cancel
going right
culture
now.
has just become very overrated.
It has been, right? I mean, it's just such a thing. I mean, when you hear things like, Mr. Potato Head, and you hear things like Dr. Seuss,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do we really need to get to the point where we're canceling things like this in our culture because they're offensive?
Well, that might just. I'd probably be more inclined to buy like Dr. Seuss books for my nieces and nephew, and I'd probably be inclined to buy a Cat in the Hat style top hat for, as a birthday present for me later this year. And then like the movie Toy Story, which had a Mr. Potato Head character, are they going to redo that without Mr. Potato Head? I mean, I certainly hope they don't, because if that be the case, Disney and Pixar might very well be just shooting themselves in the foot.
Well, that's the thing. You got things like we're taking down statues. We talked about that a while back. So you've got things
Put them
like
in
statues.
museums if they're so offensive.
Well, that's the thing. You've got things like Mr. Potato Head. You've got Dr. Seuss. Things like that seem silly. But when you think about things like, historical statues, there was a lot of debate a while back on that. And, my show had one view, another show had another view on statues a while back. And, I think what makes America great is that people can have different views on things and still, agree to disagree. But for me, with statues, there are a lot of statues out there. I mean, honest to God, I don't care if they're there. Most of them mean nothing to me. Some of them you look at and you're like, well, that's a great statue. Other ones you walk by 50 times, you don't even really look at it.
Yeah, Mrs. Potato Head too, Mr. A. You're right about that.
Right. But when people started taking down statues, you are removing America's history. And when you start to remove a country's history, I mean, that doesn't benefit your country, because again, then you maybe 50 years down the road, you might be repeating history and doing it again because you're not remembering what happened in the past,
Or if you go to Germany and visit the Auschwitz concentration camp, people have asked like fellow Germans, like, why haven't you torn down Auschwitz?
Yeah.
Go
ahead. I'm sorry.
And we've talked about that on the show before, because and the German people are just adamant that this is our history and we should never forget it, because I think that would show that even like the German people are smarter than the cancel culture movement, that if you forget your history, society is doomed to repeat it.
Ooh, Doss is being a little controversial. Do you see that comment down there? Mr. Potato Head should have been canceled long ago, or Mrs. Potato Head, when they let her out of the kitchen. So, yikes, look out. And that wasn't me. That was Doss, man. So don't point all that hate at me. Next thing you know, I'm going to be canceled. And again, since I'm on Podbean, I don't have that many fans. It probably won't be that hard to cancel me. But yeah, it's crazy, Eric. I mean, this stuff's been bothering me. Mr. Potato Head, Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben, Native American symbols on helmets. Paw Patrol was another one that was a while back. Ripping down of statues. To me, it's just, just because you don't like maybe some of the things that have happened in history doesn't mean you can erase it. And I did like the thing you said earlier. We've talked about that in the past. If you want to remove statues, if something's offensive, okay, remove it. Put it in a museum. I mean, don't destroy it. And then you could have maybe one of these museums that the government was willing to give $1 billion to in the last stimulus bill. I think that's how much they gave the Smithsonian. Why not have a place where you can go and view older statues? I mean, there was one that they took down in Boston. I think it was last spring. And honestly, after looking at it, I get it. It was an Abraham Lincoln statue, and there was a young African-American boy like shining his shoes. And I get that, Lincoln freed the slaves. I get that he did a lot of good things for African Americans, but it was a very demeaning statue. And I looked at that and I was like,
and for them to, and for them to want to, destroy these statues and defile them and stuff, that could also be looked at as an obliteration of legacy.
Yeah, I mean, it could. But, with this particular statue of Lincoln, I had no problem with them taking it down. I saw it was offensive also. I didn't really like the statue. But, I mean, you don't want to destroy it. Put it someplace where people can go back. And you have to understand that in one time in this country, that's how life was. And if you close your eyes and pretend it didn't happen, that doesn't make it go away. I mean, you can't just throw things away and cancel things and expect that to change the way people think inside and the way people feel, So I don't know, man. The cancel culture has been getting to me. So that got me into earlier today. I was talking about some of my childhood stories from the 70s and 80s and how life was just kind of different. And it looks like I've got Vivik wanting to call in. So I'll take this call and see who it is. Hello. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? Who's this?
I'm Vivik. Where are you from?
Where am I from?
We're in the
I'm
United
from
States.
United States. Where are you from?
I'm from Punjab.
From where?
I'm from India, from Punjab.
Oh, from India. Okay. Very nice.
Oh, we got a lot of friends that live in India.
Yeah, we have a lot of friends that go into the Old Man Show and my show from India. And it was funny. I was just looking at the statistics from my show. I believe that next to the United States, India is the country that listens to my show the most, even ahead of Canada, which I found to be interesting. So we do have a lot of friends from India. Now, I don't know if we lost him. He disappeared up there in the orb. Are you still here, Vivik?
Yes, because I don't know what's your show, because I am a first listener for your channel. So can you describe your show?
Sure. Yeah, we do a lot of different things on this show. We'll talk about politics. We talk about sports. We'll talk about current events. Pretty much anything. I like to talk about sometimes, things like spiritual things like God or whatever. So I have a lot of different interests, and we kind of go with the flow. If we have a customer that comes in or a listener that comes in at some point and they want to talk about a certain thing, then we go in that direction. So how about you? You're a first time in here. I mean, what would you like to talk about?
To be honest, I don't know what I ask you, but I like your channel, so that's why I called you. So
I appreciate that. Well, let me ask you this question. Now, in India, I don't know if you have some of the same problems that we have in this country right now, but we were just talking about how in the United States of America, we have a thing called canceled culture. Now, do you have that term in India?
yes, it's like a culture India.
Okay, so you get what we're talking about. So yeah, well, that's something. Oh, it looks like I may have lost him. So I was going to ask him how he felt about
The
cancel culture.
call dropped.
Yeah, so he can call back in if you
and then
But,
like on the topic of cancel culture, we've seen it affect showbiz, for instance.
yes.
And I think a most notable example was Bill Cosby, who, of course, there's no denying that he was a great comedian back during his day, but that was back when we were largely unaware of the dirty deeds he was doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, man, that was scary what Bill Cosby did. I was definitely a big Cosby Show fan, and I like Bill. I was introduced to Bill Cosby. There's another thing from the '70s. I was introduced to him back in the '70s. I remember I used to go to this kid's house.
Fat Albert and other projects he did.
Even before that, before Fat Albert, Bill Cosby had some comedy stand-up routines. And I had a friend, Scott, that was a big fan of Bill Cosby. So I remember going to his house. He'd invite me over, and he would play me Bill Cosby records, old albums down in their basement playroom. So we'd kind of hang out, listen to Bill Cosby do his stand-up. And it was, very clean. He didn't swear a lot, but, man, he was funny. So I remember listening to him way back then. And then, I watched the cartoon Fat Albert when I was a kid. At the time when you watched that, you didn't know who Bill Cosby was. But, later on you find out that he did all the voices, and that was kind of his show. But, I mean, for those that did not watch The Cosby Show, in the 80s, I mean, that was basically the African-American version of the Brady Bunch. If you've seen a Brady Bunch episode, I mean, very wholesome family, good family values. And that's kind of what The Cosby Show is based on. And it was kind of a groundbreaking show because when I was a kid, most of the shows I watched, like I know Old Man likes Sanford and Son. That was a show I used to watch also. It was about two guys that owned a junkyard. Then there was Good Times about a whole family that lived in the south side of Chicago in a tenement building. So you never really saw, that many families of African-American descent that were super successful. So this show is different where you had, Bill Cosby, the father, was a doctor, and the mother was a lawyer, and they lived in a beautiful mansion house, and they had a lot of money. And it was really just a very good, wholesome show. And honestly, I think about the women that may have, fallen victim to Bill Cosby. I mean, for God's sakes, if you're out someplace and you meet Mr. Cosby, like the nicest guy on television, you would never think that this guy is going out and like drugging women, raping them like he did. And now I don't know if you know this, Eric, but Bill Cosby went to the University of Massachusetts, and he actually has his main home is about 35 minutes away from where I live. So Bill Cosby, I'm not sure if his wife is still living there after he went to prison.
Camille.
He lives in a little small town in central Massachusetts. He's got a big house that's kind of gated off, but everybody knows where he lives. But you wouldn't expect him to live in the town where he does. I mean, he's not in Metro Boston. He's really out in the middle of nowhere. But that's probably exactly what he wanted, being famous, just to kind of get away from all the craziness in life. But yeah, that was a big disappointment when we found out about him. That was one of those things where you just couldn't believe that Bill Cosby would do that. Now, Eric, did you ever watch the show? Do you remember the TV show Seventh Heaven by any chance?
I remember that show, and I remember the lead actor Stephen Collins. Got caught up in a Me Too scandal of sorts.
He did. He was another guy. He had like 7 children. He was a preacher. I mean, it was kind of like a combination of like Little House on the Prairie and the Cosby Show and the Brady Bunch thrown in. And man, when he came out, same thing. He got caught, I guess sexually abusing people also. And it just seems like it's so widespread with a lot of this stuff. What do you think about Como? It sounds like people are going after him now in New York.
Yeah, but I think what we're seeing there is you're going to have a lot of politicians turning on each other, regardless of whether Donald Trump is in the picture or not. Because in case anybody missed the CPAC conference, without getting too political, he's already indicated that he's ready to be their boogeyman once more. But I digress.
It sounds like it. Again, I don't want to get into too much about politics, but what I would love to see is if he came back. I was going to say, if he came back, what I'd like to see, as opposed to him running for president, I'd like to see Trump run for Marco Rubio's seat in 2 years, get into Congress, and if the Republicans were to take over Congress again, literally Trump could lead the effort to impeach Biden and Harris, get them out of office. I mean, that would be, I'm sorry, but I know that a lot of people would be miserable if that happened, but for me, the entertainment value would be worth it alone just to see that happen, to see him come back full circle and just take them out in the same way they tried to take him out for 4 years. But see, I see Doss saying, yes.
Oh, get bored.
I want to see Como get the Kavanaugh treatment. Absolutely. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They're not going to go over his past with a fine-tooth comb. If they can find a way to bury what happened to him, because the media is not going to beat him down. And if they can find a way to bury it, bury this whole thing, pay somebody off so it goes away, it'll be gone, and he'll remain where he is. There's no way in hell they're going to investigate him like they investigated Kavanaugh. It's not going to happen.
Well, I know Jeremy said something about maybe trying to score another interview with another nameless person. We don't know all the details, but I mean, if that were to happen, we know shit would probably hit the fan.
Oh, definitely. And Jeremy's show.
I guess we have to be real vague on that for now until something is confirmed.
Well, it's hard because I do the same thing with my show. I reach out to quite a few different people, and I reach out to political people. I reach out to sports figures that I really admire, and some people get back to you, other people don't. The one that really surprised me is I did write. If you remember, I played a little clip of Andrew Dice Clay probably a month or so ago on the air. And I ended up writing him, thinking, well, he's not that big anymore. He's been in a couple things here and there. Maybe he'd want to do an interview. So I wrote him, and literally within 5 minutes, he wrote me back. So very quick response time. He told me no, but he was very polite about it. He said, hey, listen, I really appreciate the fact that you wrote me. I just am not taking interviews right now. And I said, and he continued to say, I really appreciate the fact that you're a fan. Thank you so much for following my career. And hopefully you can continue to support the Dice Man. And that was it. So he wrote back. He was very nice. I mean, he could have been a handler, but it was just nice to get a response. Most of the people I write to, I get no response back. I actually wrote to an old Red Sox superstar from the 1970s, Fred Lynn. He hasn't written back to me yet, but I'm kind of hoping I get to interview him. So, Jeremy's interview with the Secret Service agent was awesome. I really enjoyed that.
Oh yeah, very eye opening. And he's going to have another interview scheduled for today. But his show will go on after you and Chris are done. I
don't think our show is going to be that long today. I mean, it's going to be one girl, one woman, and as I said, she isn't healthy. She's got a failing liver, and she sounds very weak when she talks. And this is an opportunity for her to at least speak her truth. Well, because her life's in danger.
Because she doesn't know how much more time she might have left. God forbid if she
She
we were
was
to get
saying
word
there's
later that she died.
there's no way to treat what she has. Apparently, the only thing that can help her now is if she gets a new liver. That's what she needs. But apparently, she has to get worse before they'll give it to her. But she said that she was explaining her situation where, I mean, like her skin, from head to toe is like itchy all the time, and it's just like a terrible, terrible thing to hear what she's going through. So, but she's going to be very brave this afternoon, getting on the show and talking about what she went through at this group home. And I'm going to follow up with her after I get off the air just to make sure she still wants to do it. There could be a chance that she backs out. If she does, that's okay. We'll just cancel the show.
Yeah.
But
I know besides like the Circle of Hope, Agape, and Show Me Schools, you've been successful with. I know you've been successful with re-examining Pamela Smart, but I know like the Molly Bish cold case, you had expressed interest in wanting to do that, but Bish's family, I think, regrettably turned you down.
That one broke my heart. It really, really did. I've done, and I'm going to tell the story a little bit because this upsets me. It really makes me sad. Now, for me, I did what I could for Circle of Hope. And again, there were other people involved. I mean, Amanda, the daughter, did a lot. She was making TikTok videos. You've got the Hammer podcast. They've come out and done a bunch of things. Then, with Agape, you had some big wigs coming in, like Dateline NBC, and that's become kind of like a nationwide story now. So it was nice that we were able to kind of get that off the ground and help with it. But it was many facets of many different people that helped, close those places down. And I think Agape is going to be closing very shortly from what it sounds like. But I don't know. It's it's good to feel like you do good things and you try to help people. And the Molly Bish case was something that was kind of close and personal to me. I mean, I don't know the family, and I have never met the family, but we had just moved to this area, and I had just had my daughter. She was very young at the time, and I remember this young girl who was 16 years old. Beautiful young blonde girl that lives, probably 40 minutes away from where I do, half an hour. And she was a lifeguard at a pond. And her mother went to drop her off one morning, and there was a kind of a creepy guy sitting there in a car smoking cigarettes. So she stayed there, and then he left. So she ended up finally dropping her daughter off that day. So the next day she drove back again. Same guy was there, creepy guy, second day in a row. And he was, smoking cigarettes and just hanging out. And, the mother, after sitting there for like a good 30, 35 minutes, was like, all right, he probably knows somebody that's here. He's just sitting, taking a break, whatever. So she ends up dropping her daughter off, and her daughter was the first person to the pond that day to set up the lifeguard station. So probably 2 hours later, the mother got a phone call at home. Is Molly coming to work today? And the mother was like, well, what do you mean? I dropped her off 2 hours ago. And they said, well, we did find some of Molly's things. We thought maybe she forgot them here last night or was here early this morning and left. So we didn't know what happened. But they found like her shoes, her chair, a couple other things by the beach, but no Molly. So for like weeks, they searched the bottom of the pond. They were looking for her. Nobody could find her. It was all over the Boston news. This was a huge, huge, huge story because she was a young 16-year-old girl abducted and missing. She wasn't found until like years after the fact, where there were hunters out in the woods, probably 15, 20 minutes away from where she lived. They were out in the woods hunting, and they saw a blue bathing suit on the ground. And the hunter thought nothing of it, but then he came upon it like a second and third time and finally decided to call authorities. So he called authorities, because he was thinking about the Molly Bish case, but he's like, well, it was a blue bathing suit. Lifeguards wear orange. So he finally called in. The police came out. That was, in fact, Molly Bish. They found her remains, and apparently she was wearing a blue bathing suit, not an orange lifeguarding bathing suit. So still to this day, they have not caught her killer. And there's been a lot of talk in the central Massachusetts area where I live that there was actually a central Mass serial killer, because there have been a lot of unsolved mystery deaths in this area. And there was another girl that went missing about 20 minutes away years before Molly Bish, called Holly Peranian. So there have been a lot in this area that have gone missing and haven't been found. So the family, I finally reached out to them recently because they were looking to get some legislation passed in the state of Massachusetts. And I talked to Molly's sister. We had a Zoom call with her and this other woman who's a professor at a local college. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I guess they didn't like me, didn't feel like my podcast was big enough or whatever. But they chose, nope, we don't want to move forward with you. So, I reluctantly just moved on. I would have loved to have done a show. But, I don't feel, I've talked about her a little bit today, but I don't feel like I should be doing a show on someone when the family does not want me to do it. So that's just kind of how, why I haven't done the show. If I got a phone call tomorrow or an email tomorrow from Molly Bish's sister, I would be all over this, because I think that maybe we could help find the killer. And number two, get the legislation passed that they need to have passed in the state of Massachusetts. And it's to protect children. So, yeah, that was disappointing, Eric. You know how much I was looking forward to that. It just didn't work out. But those things happen,
Well, and then I know Jeremy's had success with some interviews he's been able to pick up on his show. And I'm certainly very proud of the work, James and I have done over on the Slightly Serious show, because, getting Anthony Carbonaro from Michigan back on November 2nd, that was, we didn't find that one. Carbonaro found us, and we graciously invited him on to talk to us. And then I found, of course, Michael Baca, who was from the 2016 election, the faithless elector, who really ruffled the feathers of Colorado's Democrat and Republican parties. And, we invited him on at the height of the whole election scrutiny to tell us his story and to give his thoughts on the 2020 election. And then November 30th, we were fortunate enough to finally have the Free Think Institute members come on. And I think me and James are exploring, getting ready to have them back on very soon. But the only person who may be missing from it is Arch Kennedy, because I think I have learned that he has dealt with some recent setbacks in his private life and stuff. But the people at the Free Think Institute are really good friends, and me and James are still holding out hope that we can get like a certain Miss Peggy to come on the show, because we discovered her on a friend's podcast and learned about her tell-all book and stuff, and to the point that we have expressed interest in having her on, and hopefully she might see like messages I've been sending to her, like where I've been reaching out to her, or if it comes down to it, I might even be willing to write her a lovely handwritten letter, letting her know that, she has a great story to tell, and if she's interested in coming on Slightly show, we'd love to talk to her.
Yeah, I think sometimes with these people, you have to follow up a few times too, because I imagine that if you want to interview them, other people want to interview them too. So they're probably getting multiple requests sometimes, and I think it's probably good if you can.
Miss Peggy, I think. Well, Miss Peggy, I think, is really a relatively unknown person, but we're willing to at least give her some exposure in the podcast community, for people to at least start talking about her, Right. I think Miss Peggy has a really great story here. We're going to buy her book.
Yep, exactly. And I see that El Gato came into the room. I'm not sure if he's still here, but
Ash is here, and Mr. A came back in.
Oh, he did, Mr. A. Welcome. I saw Man Cave was here for a little bit, a few other people. And I see, Lakeisha just came back in again. Yeah. So welcome to the show. El Gato, there he is, man. One of my favorites. He is definitely the coolest cat on Podbean. I can't believe I just said coolest cat. I don't even know what that means. I think I started a TV show once. But he's a cool guy. But, it's funny, Eric, the other night, I've interviewed some people on the show. I did. Probably the biggest person I had done was Diane Diamond. And that, I was pretty nervous before I interviewed her. For the younger people out there, you might not know who the hell she was. But
I
Diane
remember
Diamond,
her from Hard Copy.
Oh, so you remember. She was Hard Copy, Entertainment Tonight. And, she worked with Lester Holt. And this woman back in the day, when the Michael Jackson case broke, she was on every news station. She was everywhere. It was Diane Diamond reporting. So me growing up in that era, I was like, wow, I'm going to interview Diane Diamond. So I remember I reached out to one of my friends in broadcasting and said, dude, I'm interviewing kind of a big person. You have any tips for me? So he told me to come in prepared, have a bunch of questions written down, but also don't be afraid to let it go in different directions. So he kind of gave me some good advice on interviewing her. But I got to admit, when I interviewed Diane Diamond, I was not as nervous interviewing her as I was interviewing Max Abramson the other night. The New Hampshire, House of Representatives member. And today's kind of a big day, if you remember, Eric. Today's the day they're actually going over that hearing for that new bill to hopefully give people in the state of New Hampshire a chance to have a parole hearing after 25 years once they've been in prison. So kind of a big day for Max today. And I'm kind of hoping that works out for our, Pamela Smart, who is, one of the people that is caught in that state in a circumstance where many people believe she was innocent. So big day, but I was definitely very nervous interviewing Max. He was a very intelligent guy. I had never interviewed a politician, at the state level like that before, but it was cool. It was cool to do that, and to get a chance to, to speak to him a little bit. So let's see. Hey, Doss, who's the hacker? Oh, I see El Gato and Doss are going at it. So that's all right in the chat room.
Yeah.
So it's a troll, El Gato. Oh, man. So, Eric, what else is going on with you, man? We were talking yesterday a little bit. I'm going to wrap this up in a few minutes. But we were talking yesterday about a Podbean convention, or at least for some of us. Wouldn't that be fun? I've been thinking about that a lot.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And we would finally get to meet a lot of our awesome podcast friends. But I don't know about some of the international podcast friends like Lingalonga and Cracks and Milk Dog, but whether they would be able to fly into Vegas or not, if assuming there's no kind of travel restrictions or bans in place. But I know definitely people in the continental United States and Canada would probably be able to make it.
Yeah. Now, would we allow Homeboy to come? I mean, should El Gato be invited, or should we have him on the do not fly list?
I think he would still come, but if he didn't fly in, he could drive in from Los Angeles up Interstate 15 to Las Vegas.
That's true. It's not far. I made that ride once. He's calling it. Here we go. Let's get him on the line here. El Gato about to join us if I hit the right button. Come on.
Hang on, El Gato.
I'm trying. Okay, gotcha. The button wouldn't work. I finally got you in here. What's up, El Gato?
It's me, El Gato. What's this convention you guys are going to do in Vegas?
It's a podcaster convention where we have like a meetup with podcast friends that do our shows on location.
Don't tell him. He's not invited. Oh, you blew it, Eric. You told him. I'm kidding. Oh, no. We invited El Gato.
Yeah.
We screwed up, man.
I'm going with Mexican fireworks, Mexican tequila, everything Mexican. You know what I'm saying?
Get Mr. A to bring the tamales. He mentioned tamales to me 2 months ago, and I still want them.
Mexican weapons, everything, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Good. No, Eric and I were just kind of talking about it. Wouldn't it be cool to have like a get together in Vegas or something where you have people that you've gotten to know on the podcast getting together to hang out a little bit? That'd be kind of fun.
And maybe even do our shows on location
in front of a crowd. That'd be awesome.
That'd be fun. Wouldn't that be cool? Well, imagine now if we came into Vegas together, being the huge shows that we are, I mean, we'd probably get comp free rooms. You'd have 1,000 people waiting to pay tickets to see our show.
It would probably be a Caesar's hotel.
Yeah.
I could see me setting up my table, the John DeVito show, and as I'm on air, I can see like a little tumbleweed rolling in front of my table, blowing by with no
Are we gonna be in the good Vegas or the old fucking shitty broken down Vegas?
No, we would probably be on the Strip, like in the Paradise section of Vegas.
Yeah, but.
See, I've never been to the
wouldn't be
section.
in the northern half.
Not Circus,
or
right?
in Laughlin.
I think I've been to Vegas like 5 times. I've never been to the shitty section. I've only gone to like the
well,
nice area.
I hear Henderson is pretty good.
Is it? Well, you're talking about Vegas, though. There's old Vegas, right? The old casinos.
Yeah, they have a section, Fremont Street. You guys never went to Fremont Street?
I never went there, no.
It's still,
I don't think I've heard of that.
It's still open. It's way down there. Like, you got the Vegas, right? But if you keep going down, that's the original Strip, way down there. It's still the Strip, but it has like, what does it have? The Golden Horseshoe? It has like the shitty ones, bro. Circus, like I said.
Oh, right. I remember those.
It has,
nice idea, Mr. A.
The one that they filmed, the Harrah's?
I remember Harris. Okay, those are still there. I didn't even realize they were still there. Now, did you ever see the movie Vegas Vacation when Randy Quaid's character took Chevy Chase's character to like old Vegas? But he was like, this place has kind of different games. So they have like rock, paper, scissors, guess the number, like Hyro.
That wasn't even there. That was like in the outskirts in the desert.
Oh, is that where they filmed that?
Yeah. No, he took him to like
right.
10 miles out to like the outskirts, and they had like pick a number behind his hand.
And he'd have like 3 fingers out, and it'd be like 5. You gotta be like, vote 3. Honest to God, Vegas Vacation is underrated. That is one of the funniest movies. I like that one, I think, as much as any of the other ones that Chevy Chase and Randy Quaid were in. Mr. Papa Giorgio, remember his son?
And he keeps winning cars and shit, and at the end they drive home to Chicago, right?
The father loses everything. His son's got like 10 cars, like an entourage of people hanging out with him because he won so much money.
Wait, how'd you say it? 10 what?
Oh, 10 cars. 10 cars. It slipped. Let me correct that. 10 cars. All right. So
Oh shit!
Mr. A, man, if you make the tamales, I'll fly you out there. If you bring tamales and you're willing to make them, I'll pay for your airfare. That's the deal. That is the
You
deal.
know, I love tamales, but I love the jalapeno and cheese ones the best. To be honest with you, I don't
Just
know.
likes my accent. I try to hide my accent too, but it still comes out. So I try to hide it.
Have
Mine's
you
not
ever
as bad
had-
as some of my relatives. I've got some relatives that have hardcore Boston accents. And
Have
they're
you
really
ever
funny.
had those? Have you ever had those guys, the jalapeno and the cheese?
I have not. No, they sound good though.
They're good, man.
Mm.
They're like, you got the pork, you got those, and then you got like candied ones. Hey, candied ones, go fuck yourself. I don't want candies in my tamales, all right?
Fuck no, that's not a good match at all. I mean, I go, no, thank you. If you're gonna have it hot, man, it's gonna be hot. I don't want candy in there.
Well, not candy. It's like sweet. It's like a sweet feeling.
Oh wait, my son's back. He wants to
Yeah,
talk about his
dessert.
girlfriend because a lot of families in town listen. So my son comes up, my 14-year-old, and he likes to annoy me when I'm on the air. He makes faces at me. He tries to distract me. So now my new routine is when he comes up to my table, Ethan, let's talk about some of your girlfriends in town. Who do you have a crush on right now? Oh, you don't think that's funny? He walked away.
I want to
He walked
know.
away.
Ask him what how he felt that Eminem was on your show the other day.
Oh, did you hear that? I don't know if you heard it, Ethan. Brandon heard it, but he wants to know how do you feel that Eminem was on my show the other day? That Eminem was on my show the other day. You didn't hear that? I know Brandon heard it. He just walked away. He's being a teenager. So he just went, what? I'll tell you, man, teenagers, they're a fucking pain in the ass. That's all I can say. I love them, but man, we got 3 of them in our house right now, and I just need like a vacation home someplace. It can be small, just so I can get out and get away from these teenagers.
Yeah.
But,
No, I know, man. I know. I was a teenager. You were a teenager, so we know.
oh,
right?
I was a douche. I was such a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
I want to go back and apologize to my parents. I was such a pain in the ass when I was a teen. I was in trouble all the time, coming home drunk, everything else. I remember one time I came home drunk. Oh, yeah. I mean, I was like, I think 15 or 16, came home, I went to a party, was drinking orange juice and vodka. I didn't realize it was going to get me that drunk. So I was literally like, laying down in the backyard, throwing up at this party in high school. So my friends drove me around forever, finally brought me home. And of course, this is the one night. It's like midnight. My parents were still awake. They'd go to bed. So they're both sitting on the couch watching TV. I'm just like, son of a bitch. So I walk in. They're like, hey, how you doing, John? I'm like, pretty good. Had a good time. I'm really tired, though. I'm going to go to bed. So I walked by them. They said nothing. As I went into the kitchen, I slammed into the refrigerator, like completely bumped into it.
Oh, Jesus.
So they went into my room. So I was arrogant enough to thought I fooled them. So all of a sudden, I'm in my room, and I hear, John, could you come out here for a second? I'm like, sure. So I go back out, and have you been drinking? I'm like, no, I don't drink. Of course not. My mother's like, let me smell your breath. So, of course, I blew my breath on her. She's like, that smells like alcohol. I'm like, all right, I was drinking. And then I later found out that vodka doesn't have a smell. So she was lying to me, completely just busted me.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I got grounded for a month. That was like when I was 16, I think. A month's grounding for that. So,
Crazy. Hey,
so
John,
I was a pain in the ass. Go ahead.
John, before I leave, and I know this is like a show about everything.
Yes.
It says it's a Mystery Wednesday. I don't know
Mystery
what the fuck
Wednesday.
that means, but
Neither do I.
but I'll just say this. This Saturday, bro, is gonna be a stacked UFC card. I think 3 championship fights.
Okay, hold on. I'm writing this shit down because I'm
Listen,
gonna forget.
bro,
Tell
you
me
can't miss
when and
this
where.
one.
When and where? Tell me.
Saturday, hopefully it's at night like they always are. They start at 7 p.m.
Okay.
But it's going to be Israel Adesanya, the middleweight champion, moving up to light heavyweight to challenge that guy for his belt. So a Polish guy with Polish power has the championship right now, and he's moving up because he's such a badass to take that title away and become a 2-time champ.
Now, is this on pay-per-view or like one of the networks or whatever? Pay-per-view?
It's going to be on pay-per-view, but you have to have ESPN Plus to order it or whatever.
Okay, I do have that. So, all right, good to know.
Or the Fire Stick.
Yeah, I got one of those too. We get a Fire Stick or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
but
Blondie,
welcome.
But the second championship is Amanda Nunes versus Megan Anderson, I think.
Okay, good fight.
Oh, you never heard of Amanda Nunes beating the fuck out of every chick she ever fought?
I've heard the name. I've never seen her fight, though. I've never seen her, so.
You got to watch her fight, man.
All right.
She destroyed Ronda Rousey. She destroyed Holly Holm.
Okay, so she's the one. I saw her knock out Rousey, so that was her?
Yeah, man.
Okay.
She's brutal. And then there's another fight I can't really remember right now, but it's going to be a good card. Just want to let you know, man.
Well, I appreciate that because I always miss these, and I do love it. So I'm going to actually buy this, and we'll watch. You know what we should do? We should talk about it next week about the fights or whatever.
Yeah. The Israel Adesanya alone is going to be good.
All right, good to know. I appreciate you telling me that because I always miss them. So I actually wrote it down on my little pad of paper in front of me. I'm going to order that Saturday night. It'll be something to do Saturday, chilling out while we're still freezing our asses off up here.
Do me a favor, if you want or if you can, go on YouTube and type in UFC Countdown, and they have a really good countdown show. Man, you'll get pumped up after that. I'm telling you.
All right, I'm writing that down too. So on YouTube, UFC Countdown. Got it.
Yep.
All right. Hey, Eric, listen.
Guys.
Bye, buddy. Thanks for stopping in.
All right, later.
Hey, Eric, you want to run off the shows that are coming later, and then we'll wrap up the bow on this thing.
The shows coming up this afternoon include Frankie D's Crib. He will be on around 3 p.m. Eastern, and hopefully Robert, will be doing the Mr. Clean show like an hour before you at 4 p.m. Eastern. But I know his second hour might eat up, but like the first hour of your show at around 5 p.m. Eastern. And I know we look for you and Chris come back later for those interviews, and Cummings' Culture, I think, will get his like normal 7 p.m. time slot this evening, and then the Wednesday edition of the Slightly Serious Show, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, followed at 11 p.m. by your choice of Trice Talk or the Forgotten Tunes with Chris. And I know Chit Chat with the Old Man returns tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, followed by your Thursday edition. And I know, like, come the weekend, David will have Mysteries of the Paranormal, and Dennis Lee will have Tall Tales in the Rabbit Hole, and then Lyrical Laxatives, and the Old Man's Friday night and Sunday music shows as well. Should be entertaining.
A lot of good shows, man. A lot of good shows happening, which is good. And we'll see today. I mean, keep an eye on my show. I'm hoping this woman still wants to do the interview. I'm going to check with her now just to make sure she's still on. If I have to cancel, I'll just send you a text and let you know. But otherwise, plan on 5 o'clock this afternoon Eastern time. We're going to do another tough interview with a woman that was abused at the Christian boarding school, again in Missouri. But Eric, I don't know if you were on in the very beginning when I was talking about it before we wrap up. Agape is going down, man. I don't know if you saw it, for the last 5 days, they've had 4 or 5 police officers in the school, like interviewing people and investigating and things like that. And the people coming out of the woodwork claiming abuse is mounting and mounting. So I think it's only a matter of time, hopefully, before they shut their doors and they stop abusing children,
Well, and Missouri starts enacting tougher laws, and other states follow suit. Yeah. And I know you and Chris are going to definitely touch up on a similar story out of New Hampshire as well.
Right. And, that's one of the things, too. I mean, if this school closes in Missouri, though, they can just move to another state that doesn't have laws. So I think there are like 17 states in this country that do not have laws protecting children in these type of boarding homes. So it's kind of scary to think that all the school needs to do is take their money and move someplace else and rebrand themselves and maybe call them a different name, So who knows? All right, man.
But we certainly haven't heard the last of this, so love you and God bless you, everybody.
We have not. All right, love you all. Take care, everybody, and check back at 5 if you want to hear that interview. We'll see you. Bye-bye now. All done? You all done?
What?
You all done?
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Hanging around the house this afternoon, I take it? Tired. Plus, you doesn't seem like you're enjoying snowboarding this year as much.
Well, I do